value to your house and loss of disputes with your neighbours and loss of a view. So I've put some documents together, and I thought that we could maybe, when we get together, that we could go through that. So
Sure.
It's not like wading through mud from day one.
Thanks, Andrew.
One other thing just to ask, in terms of, it was raised at the annual parish meeting about members of the public in the village who wanted to talk to someone about planning with the parish council. Would Andrea, you're happy to be that contact for?
Yeah, that's what we used to do before, that because I used to get all the paperwork, then we kept it at the house, and then anybody that wanted to come and see it would knock on the door. Now that's changed because it's all on the portal. However, I was the point of contact before if anybody wanted to talk or discuss anything or wanted some advice of coming to a meeting and what could they say, then that was open, my door was open and that was fine.
Do we still get paper plans?
No.
So it is solely through the portal?
Yeah.
Right.
It's a very good portal.
On occasions.
Oh. Okay. Next is the audit monitoring group. Now this meets what, 3 times a year?
3 times a year, or if required at other times. I mean, there may be the odd occasion when we need to have an extra meeting, but basically 3 times a year. Usually in September, usually sort of end of the year, so December, January, and then before the end of the financial year in March. They're the normal 3 main times. And the audit monitoring group really is just that. It's actually something that I introduced about 4 or 5 years ago, because I am aware of the fact that as a council you are actually responsible for the finances of the council, even though you're actually not dealing with them on a day-to-day basis. And it's important for me to know that you, as councillors, are happy with the financial position of the council, and that the correct processes are being adhered to. So that covers me and it covers you. So the audit monitoring group has to comply with the clerk and the chairman, plus anybody else who wants to join it. There's no number really. We've had 4 in the past. Anything more than 4 becomes a bit unwieldy, frankly. But if it is your wish, we can have more than 4.
Actually, you expressed an interest.
Yeah,
Are you still
I'd like to go on the
Okay.
so what's Bella?
John, you were on it.
I was on it. I'm fine.
Are you happy to continue?
Yes, perfectly.
Okay. Is everyone happy that the audit committee consists of Owen, myself, John and Andrea?
Yeah.
All those in favour? Thank you. Well done. Emergency group. That's a more difficult one, because what this comprised of was it arose out of the flooding that we had in 2014, was it? 12, was it? Which resulted in us doing the work in Church Lane and the subsequent badgering of Wessex Water. But I think the emergency group would comprise other issues, and I think I'd like to defer that and get something out to everybody to consider, because it's a bit of a health and safety thing, really, Nigel.
Yeah.
Because, for instance, 2 families were evicted from their houses for flooding for almost 12 months or more, and really we probably didn't do enough maybe to help them initially. And if that sort of thing happens, say in the dead of night, someone gets flooded out of their home or whatever, then we need to have something that we can rely on. So it's expanded a bit, and it also comprised members of the village as well, who joined the few councillors that made up the group. So it became a bit of a force, and Peter was the chairman at the time. But I think we'll address that one going forward. John?
For David and Nigel, you probably don't know it, but when flooding first started, we did, as a council, decide to buy a certain amount of equipment. We've got pumps and various bits of equipment. I don't need to go into it now, but that is there. So there is some equipment to attend to flooding, but of course this is a much wider issue. If we want to make it an emergency response team, and we need to try and encourage people from the village to take an interest.
Thank you, John. Bob?
Also, Chairman, just for those who've been around for a very long time, they might remember a gentleman who used to call Albert Horsfield, who was our emergency planning officer in the village years ago. And one of the things was a number of villages have a plan, so if there's some sort of major disaster, so it could be that a train derails at Station Road, and what happens? And it's having that contact of, do you use the village hall as an emergency centre, is the church an emergency centre, having that sort of plan of if something big happens, what? And we feed then into the more wider Sedgemoor and County plans as well, but a number of villages do have that sort of, and I think it fit into this sort of group.
Yeah, I think we need that. So we'll try and get something together for everybody to start to consider, if that's okay. Let's move on. Item 2, apologies.
Apologies from Brian Freestone.
Okay.
He's actually on holiday, some hotter climes on that.
So can we have a proposal that we accept that apology, and all those in favour? Thank you, well done. Declarations of pecuniary interests or personal or prejudicial interests. Bob, planning?
Just the normal ones on planning for non-predetermination at Sedgemoor Committee, also as personal as district and county councillor, if issues crop up with that, and also a personal one on the War Memorial request for cleaning contribution, because I believe that's come from the British Legion, of which I'm a member, but it's only a personal interest.
No, you're a member of the Legion. Yeah, there's one member of the Legion as well.
Okay, so and you are on, Cynthia? Okay.
That's okay, because if there's a personal interest, you can take part in the discussion and indeed the voting.
Oh, you can.
Yes, you do everything. You've just disclosed that you have a personal interest.
Yeah. David?
Pecuniary interest on 0719 00017, and that's a working relationship.
We'll try and get it right this time,
Yeah,
shall we?
we can get it right.
Thanks, David.
17
Okay, moving on, item 4, confirmation of minutes from the last meeting. We've all been circulated with the minutes and had the opportunity to respond. Are you happy that they are a true record of the meeting and that I am happy to sign those minutes?
They do include the amendment.
Yeah.
Proposer John, second David. All those in favour? Okay, I'll sign them later on. Okay, thank you. Item 5, planning. Andrea, are you okay on this? I've done it myself, but I'll leave it to you.
Yeah, I've done it.
So we're on 0719 0015, yeah?
Okay, so this is the old farm at Burton Road, and it's Rebecca Steer, and she has submitted an application to extend her outdoor arena and erect an agricultural building. So I went through the application, and it said that the proposal is within 20 metres of a watercourse. I don't know if that's an issue. It will self-drain because it's shredded tyres and it's sand, so I don't know if that's an issue. However, the environmental haven't responded. On the application, they also said that they'd not taken pre-application advice, but then on the written design and planning statement, they said that the advice was taken on the 1st of April, sorry. That information hasn't been submitted, so I don't know what was said, whether they agree with it or not. None of the neighbours have put any objections up till today. The arena already exists, and there is a standard size, and I did check that, and it it was right that the 3/4 size is what's in existence, and that they want to go to a full-size arena because they are amateur competition horse riders.
You certainly can't do dressage practice on that
No.
40, it's got to be 60 by 40.
Yes.
Yeah.
Also, they've got the flood zone 3 flood mitigation, which they wrote themselves. So I really don't know if that's it.
No comments, are there?
What, i.e. the flood risk assessment?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They wrote it themselves.
Yeah.
But no comments from anyone?
Nobody made any comments, no.
No drainage board or anything?
No. So, you know, whether they will accept that by somebody just writing what they think is acceptable, but nobody has responded to it.
Hindesty is an architect as well, isn't he? He's her father. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. So what's your opinion then, or recommendation?
Well, it is an agricultural building which is in keeping in what they've actually got there. They've already have the 3/4 size menage, so to actually put it to full size, that makes complete sense. It's only going to be slightly bigger, and it's not impacting on anybody else.
The new barn is going to be roofed with reclaimed pan tiles
Yes.
and
Yes.
cedar cladding,
Yes.
so that sounds pretty good.
Don't we have to have something from the drainage board though officially?
Um,
Because usually it's water, isn't it, when you're doing these
Well,
buildings?
it says the arena will have a porous surface
Yeah.
of sand and gravel which allow percolation of surface water.
On a personal, we've got an all-weather arena, and it is literally 6 foot away from the ring. But it naturally drains,
Yeah.
so and it's not got effluent on it. You know, it's got to be cleaned. You can't have horse muck filtering through. Is what I'm trying to say.
It's
Diplomatically,
So
yes.
would your proposal be then that we accept this or support this planning?
I think I would like to ask that we support this because it is enhancing what they've already got to make it the proper size.
Okay.
And if it gives somebody pleasure, you know, that they can actually go into competitions and it's their pastime, then I think that's a well and just application.
Right. A seconder for that, please?
So,
Yeah, Nigel?
can you just refresh me how you want that to be worded?
How would you like it? Just improvements.
Improvement, yeah.
On basic agricultural improvements. Yeah. And it's proposed by Andrea, seconded by Nigel. All those in favour? Thank you. That's carried unanimously. 0719 0017.
Okay, so this is an application made by Mr. Frost, Paul Frost, and this is Ham Farm on Ham Road. And what he's proposing is to have a general purpose agricultural building and a hard standing. If you go to the roundabout on the A38, there is a similar building there that faces out, that has a roof which has got onduline on it, and its front opening so cattle can actually feed but still be sheltered. The south elevation, there's going to be grey fibre cement sheets at low level with slatting. And only because I read up about this, if you shelter animals during the winter months or when they are actually giving birth, they have more chance of survival by being undercover than being exposed and out in a field. There is a flood risk assessment that was done by an architect, which was submitted, and also there's a flood map for the planning. This again is in flood zone level 3, and it does have a high probability of flooding, but they've said what they would do for their defences. That was acknowledged. There are no neighbours or anybody else writing anything in against this proposed application, and it's cited at the end of the land, which really isn't overlooked by anybody. And it's
Just one question.
yes.
At our last meeting, it had, I think it's like a different number.
No, there's two, the same.
Two,
They're
two
next door
separate-
neighbours.
Oh, I see.
Yes,
Okay,
yes, it is, it does
One's the
appear to be
next
the
door
same,
farm.
it did the same application, it didn't.
Okay,
They just farmed the next door to one another and they're having.
Just next door to each other.
building.
understood. Okay.
Yes, that's
Sorry.
what's happened.
No,
that's
by all
fine.
means.
Looked exactly the same. Yeah.
So there's nothing on the portal to say that anybody, neighbours, there's nothing from the environmental, nothing from the highways, nothing at all.
Your proposal?
To support. Because it is a farm, we can support this because it's actually for the welfare of animals. It's in with keeping of what that piece of land is used for as being agricultural. And again, it will enhance the property by having an additional building.
Thank you. Seconder for that? David? All those in favour? Thank you, that's carried unanimously. Okay, can you get volume again, please? Item 6, reports. Do we have anything on footpaths?
No.
I'm sorry, Bob.
Oh,
Beg your pardon.
that's
No worries.
Yeah, you're not numbered on this, that's why. You better give him a number.
Couple of things. In terms of Sedgwell, as everyone knows, the elections took place in May. Conservatives held control at Sedgwell with 28 of the 48 seats. We've been doing the sort of appointments of committees, and they're now all in place. In terms of my own role, I'm still chairman of the planning committee. Andrew, who obviously is the other ward councillor for here, is no longer on the planning committee. He's had a change of role in that respect, so he will be more available to be involved with planning matters should issues crop up. But he is actually the portfolio holder for housing, which was part of his portfolio before was affordable housing. He's now also in charge of delivery of new homes, so that means that he's not going to be on the planning committee. In terms of county, many of you may have seen the Panorama programme last week, and I think the second episode is actually tonight, which was highlighting the issues about care, that are adult social care, and the pressures on the scheme. It's well worth seeing. If you haven't seen it, it is available on the iPlayer. It gives some insight as to the sort of pressures that the adult social care is under across the country, but obviously highlighting issues in Somerset. As I mentioned to you before, in terms of the budget, the county has a total budget net of about 320 million. 140 million of that is now spent on adult social care, and a further 85 million is spent on children's social care. So, as you can see, those two elements are a massive element within the county's budget.
So was that 185?
So 85 for children, and 140 for adults. In terms of the budget, you'll have seen reported that we've come to the end of the financial year now for the county, and as you know, there was the emergency budget that took place in September to look at basically having to cut back a number of elements of expenditure, because at that stage, had we not taken those issues, we would have ended up with about £19 million overspend. We've actually come in slightly underspent, so within budget now for this year, and also whereas our reserves were down, heading to about half of what they were recommended to be, which was about 7 instead of being 15, the reserves are now back up to target. So they are a much healthier position to be going into the new financial year. There are still reductions coming in funding, so we are currently looking at probably, if nothing is done to address it, we would have about a £5 million overspend by the end of this year. So obviously there will be elements taken to both deal with reducing expenditure, but also looking at increasing income to address those issues. In terms of some expenditure, you'll remember that there was the small improvement scheme for highway works, which I reported a couple of years ago. Each area was able to have 2 within each patch. Within my division, and the two areas that we're trying to take forward is the coastal footpath at Barrow, which is alongside the golf course, and also at Bidisham, the turn right lane into Bidisham Lane. If anyone knows, coming around the A38, it's a very dodgy corner. Unfortunately, there isn't room to actually increase the width of the road, but they are looking at signs and lines and warning flashing signs that will be introduced to try and help on that. So those are the two schemes, and the plan is to see 60 of those schemes delivered across the whole of the county this year. And finally, in terms of highways, we've got now 68 sections of resurfacing to be done across the county. We haven't had the full details of where, but it will be up to about 148 miles of roads are going to be resurfaced during the next 12 months. Other than that, happy to take any questions.
Any questions for Bob? Well done, thanks Bob. Thanks very much for that. Okay. Am I right now to move on?
Yes.
So who deals with footpaths?
I haven't walked all the footpaths, but the footpaths I've been on, I haven't found anything except round the reservoir. I know it's not really, it needs cutting. The grass is enormously long and it's horrible to work through. The dogs, you know, the little dogs find it quite difficult. I think in other years we have had it cut, haven't we? I don't know if it does that.
Water will do it.
Sorry?
Bristol Water.
Yeah,
Oh, will they?
we have a contact with them now. Do you remember last year they came and did a whole load of work for us?
Yes,
up there?
that's true.
And so I was able to actually get a contact
Yeah.
to talk to, so I can certainly raise that with them.
Yes, because it needs doing right from the beginning to right round.
What do they do all the way around, David?
No,
Or is it just
They
round
do
the
it-
Around the reservoir.
Round the
Yeah, just from the
reservoir?
reservoir. Well, it's from when you get on when you come across the field and then
Yeah.
you start going round.
But they won't do that bit.
Yeah.
Well,
Mike, doesn't Mike Diamond do it?
Yeah, later.
Oh, well.
Yeah,
We can
he
ask
does
him
that
then.
generally. When I see him, I'll ask him.
later when
Then
it's
it's
hedging
later,
out in
isn't it?
time.
Yeah.
If I see him, because I often do, I'll ask
So
him.
Mike,
But it'd be good if you could do that. But I didn't see anything else untoward. But I haven't been up to the knoll, so of course we. Well, I don't know what we're doing about that because we've already discussed that, haven't we? So, is it just as we go up the knoll?
Mr. Woodward, isn't it?
Yeah, sorry.
Last meeting.
Yes, it is.
I
I don't know what
yeah,
we're
on
doing
the
about.
path from the back of the church to the first kitting gate, I've rung a contractor and I'm waiting to get a response to get a meeting
Right.
with him.
Right.
On the top path, we were going to contact our guy at the National Trust,
Yes, we
local warden, to see if we can get him.
we have a bit of a problem with the National Trust. We don't seem to have anybody locally as they did before. So I think we're going to have to draw a site from a wider geographical area. I phoned the Western Supermare office and they said the job was vacant at the moment. So I'm not quite sure whether they're actually going to take somebody else on or whether they're going to actually extend somebody else's territory. So I'll just, keep on that one,
Yeah.
see what happens.
Yeah.
So if and when I meet this contractor, do you want me to take him up there as well?
It might be a good idea actually. It might be a good idea, mightn't it? To
Okay.
get an overview of it.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Anything else on footpaths, Bob?
Can I just report, opposite the East Brent road sign, the footpath that goes up the knoll, there's a finger post which is forming, it's almost completely fallen over. So it's more or less opposite the Brent Knoll sign on Burton Road.
Okay.
Signage,
Yeah.
signage post. I don't know who we could contact.
Chris East, I
Chris
think.
East. Chris East.
Because it's as you leave the road, it's the
It's
one
an
that
official sign.
Okay. Fine.
Do you want me to speak to him? Or you
Well, I'll
want to
check
speak
them, yeah.
Okay.
I'll do Chris now. It's on the job.
to him? Right. Thank you. Any more on footpaths? Okay. Highways.
The only thing that I've had reported is that a cyclist on Station Road had a mishap by coming off due to the condition of the road surface I understand this is now being addressed.
By Somerset Highways?
Well,
or-
it's going to be brought up, I believe, with Mr. Phil.
So how are you going to bring that up then, Rob?
I don't know when they're available, they haven't contacted me yet, but I'll wait.
Okay.
I can take that.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Before you forgive me,
Sorry, David.
still on highways, do we know what the sort of finish by date is likely to be for the road closures on Station Road and on now Hart Lane?
Station Road is now finished.
That's all finished?
Yes. I did have another complaint regarding Station Road in as much as the road closed signs were not taken down very promptly and they were still there late yesterday evening.
In Hart Road?
Hart Road, that will be early July.
Thank you, Malcolm. Who did the green?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
Well, there's the good news and the less good news. And I'll do the good news first. I did the toilet block and had a good look around, and the toilet block is very well kept and really in very good order. The lock of the gents' toilet, which I think you were dealing with, Colin, still remains broken. And I noticed that the door panel, which is quite thin, behind where the bolt goes, of course, that is cracked and therefore needs to be a repair job and a new lock on that toilet door.
Well, I gave what's his name? Paul. I gave Paul. I bought a new lock. I gave it to him last weekend, and he said he would fit it.
I did this on the 30th, so it's 5 days ago.
Okay.
So 5 days ago, that was the toilet. No, it's fine.
He's got a new lock to fit.
Village Green, I've mentioned probably most of this before. I thought the Village Green was extremely poor and a really bad advertisement for the village when we look after ourselves and keep things in good order. Grass was not cut and looked unkempt. The grass in the front of the hall had not been cut and that looked not good. The area around the hall, and there were a lot of weeds and it was unkempt and the weeds need to be sprayed. I had brought up on the left hand side of the green the chain fence and the weeds. I brought it up a year ago and I brought it up again about 3 months ago. But the chain fence on the left, we agreed it was going to do something about it, but the chain fence remains unrepaired. The weeds were going to be sprayed, they hadn't been sprayed, so weeds are growing up and saplings are growing, and also we've got bamboo coming under the wall from the house next door, and the bamboo fronds are now up to 6 foot high. So that's not particularly good. The bushes on the green are supposed to be cut, they haven't been, they really need to cut back. The benches, I think we've been waiting for Andy Selwyn to get some work done on the benches and they have not been repainted. The supporting ironwork of the play equipment has been reported needing patch painting, that hasn't been done. The play surfaces are in very good order. On the right hand side of the ring, we've got this under consideration anyway because there's the chain link and the bushes and the ring, all of which is being discussed and what we're going to do about the ring and what we're going to do about the weeds and the fence, but it does look not particularly good. We ought to consider all the measures reported by GB Sports. We talked about it in the past. Most of the things, most of the points are low, but they've been low for a very long time, and we're not attending to the points raised by GB Sports. As I say, most of these things I've spoken about before. Thank you.
Thanks, John. My initial thoughts, and I'll share them with everybody, and please come back to me if you don't agree or if you think there's... But John has issued a whole list of things that need attention, including the village green, car park toilet, maybe, and the GB Sports. What I would suggest, John, is could you make a list of all those jobs, make a list of everything, and circulate it to us, and then I suggest before the next meeting we all meet a little bit earlier and we'll walk around the green to actually identify the issues, and then we know what we've got to do to sort them out.
Well, we've got a copy of GB Sports, everyone's got a copy of that. Is that
Yes, but I'm coming back to the chain link fencing and the
Well, I make a note of that. I mean, it's there. I mean, I can repeat that.
Okay.
I'll take what John's written down here and I'll do a list and I'll circulate it.
And then
So
could
that saves John a job.
No, I mean, I'd
I'll
quite
listen
happy to
and
do
email it around to everybody,
Right.
and then perhaps, as Colin says, before the next meeting, we'll meet a bit earlier, have a walk around, do a walk around the green. No, I'm happy to do that.
Happy to second that if that was a proposal, but I think in terms of GB Sport list, didn't we agree a couple of meetings ago we were going to contact GB Sport and ask them to
Yes.
actually give us a quote for
Exactly,
doing the stuff that needed doing?
And when Colin Lewis rang me up, at the time we weren't quite sure who was actually going to be dealing with it. So I said to him, look, if we ring you up and give you a week's notice, can you come out and talk to a couple of councillors and talk about what needs doing and give us a quote to do the work? Because actually we probably need more than one quote. Although, because they have identified the problems, I think they should be given an opportunity to quote for putting it right. But I think we need probably to get another quote as well. But I can certainly do that, and if somebody's happy to meet with Colin Lewis.
Well, I'd be very happy to meet him, but I think it would be quite useful if another member of the council came with me. We can get a date out and go and meet him and discuss it, so we all know what's going on.
Anybody else happy to?
I'll go with you, John, if you want to meet Colin
Yeah,
Lewis.
fine.
Yeah. Okay. But I do think, because, and it would be useful for David, it would be useful for Nigel, I know it's only a small matter, but to walk the green to see exactly what we've got and to see the areas we need to, and it'll give you an idea when we look at their health and safety. Warwick?
Yeah, I was just going to say that surely any of these defects would fall under whether we would have to do a risk assessment,
Yeah.
and then these should be fixed in order of priority based on risk,
Yeah.
because if we haven't got a risk assessment, we haven't got a health and safety policy, then either the play equipment, the park and everything should be made out of bounds until those things are deemed as safe for children to play in there, because chain link fence or anything like that is dangerous. Bamboo, if it gets hard, is dangerous for children, especially if they cut it down and start throwing it at people. And so it's about looking at the potential risks as well and mitigating for them.
What we do as a council is that every month GB Sports come in and they actually inspect all of the equipment.
Yeah, well, that's the play equipment.
Yeah, yeah, and the floors and the matting and everything.
And they give a risk.
A risk assessment. They actually do that. And what's happened is that they have flagged up, for a long time, and because they have been low level, we've decided as a council previously there was money needed to be spent in other areas, and if this remained low risk, then that was okay, and it never ever went up to a medium risk. Nothing has.
Well, this is the main one, and that's low.
And that's been since day one.
It's been
Yeah.
vital for about a year.
But then a low risk is still a risk.
Yeah.
True.
But we do act on those lists, David, and we have from time to time carried out minor repairs that have needed doing. So we're very much aware of it. But I think Warwick's suggestion is very good. We need to walk it. We need to look at it and make sure that when John makes his report, or anybody else, we know exactly what he's referring to. So perhaps we could meet, say, we'll send out an email and we'll meet up.
But just finally for David and Nigel, because you weren't involved in the pre-discussion, but on the right-hand side of the green, and you've got the development of houses there, there's a very deep green. Balls get kicked over. So therefore the chain link fence is broken down. there is an old wooden fence which is held up by lots of saplings. David and I went to have a look at it because we need to inspect the ring which goes alongside the houses, around behind the village hall, out and around the tennis courts and disappears under the road. Well, it's not flowing, and therefore we have asked the drainage board to come and look at flow. That's one thing, and then we need to talk to the house owners to see what we could or could not do to improve the fence, or to replace the fence, all up for discussion. But it's one of those things which is on the table.
Whose fence is it?
Ours.
Ah,
It's our fence. It's a chain link fence, and saplings and weeds and everything got in. It gets in the chain link fence, but David and I realised when we had a look at it, there is a wooden fence there which had collapsed many years in the past, but it's now shielded by a broken chain link fence. So it's not cheap, but it's something that we need to address, and we need to talk to the house owners about to get some sort of agreement. And whether we build a slightly higher wall or what, I don't know. But children will kick their footballs over the fence into their gardens. So we need something to be addressed. It's been pending now for about 3 months.
Thank you, John. Owen, parish issues?
Yeah, nothing from the surgery. We actually didn't have anybody come to the surgery apart from Richard Mills Roberts, and we're obviously going to talk about the footpath rerouting later on. Apart from that, it was quite a quiet parish surgery, I think is the right way of describing it. So nothing to report from that. What else have we got here? We've got the Moses banner, we haven't got that at the moment, so I can't get that, can we?
No.
Then we're on to the police crime speed watch, SID.
Okay, so we've dealt with emergency planning group. We right at the start of our meeting, so we need to move on to police crime speed watch SID updates. Do I suspend the meeting now because Richard's going to speak to us?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll suspend the meeting and invite Richard to tell us where we are with our SID. Thanks, Richard.
Might do. If anybody wants to take on an old broken SID, bracketry or rest of it, you probably stick it on eBay and get something for it. Okay, what I did in the first instance was just to review how many speed indicator device manufacturers there were in this country. Those of you might have known that the previous radar works unit was based now only in Germany. I didn't feel that was appropriate really, because you want to deal with somebody that can deal with easily in this country. So I approached 5 companies in total with an interesting outcome. The 5 came down to 1 for one simple reason. Despite contacting 3 of them by email and phone call 2 weeks ago, I have still had no reply from them. It doesn't smack of very good customer service to me. You can't get a reply in the first instance. And these are large companies making big units for many, many councils. So I discounted them. There was a 4th company which I contacted, and they did reply to me, but quite honestly, their service and their pricing didn't seem very good. And then I came across another company known as SID Signs, which is quite a good name for a company that's going to supply, and got in touch with them, and they were extremely reactive. And they're local, they're in Hampshire, in Fording Bridge, I think it is, and they claim to be the cheapest manufacturer and also the best, which is a pretty good sort of statement to make. So I got on to quite a long conversation with them and saw their data sheets, looked at the 3 models they made, 3 basic models they made, which I'll outline in a moment, very briefly. I'll be sending all this information out, so perhaps Owen can be able to circulate it, so for the next meeting you could dare I say, make a decision. That makes it.
Hang on, that sounds like pressure.
Can it say tumbleweed, just drifting down the hole, yes.
Did you not send us something a week or two ago?
Probably send you Richard. Did I send you Richard's email? Probably.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Oh, the one that I got from me?
Yeah.
Okay,
But
yeah.
David, you're quite right. There was another email which came in of a village which has got some sort of speed device, which actually was knocking out about 300 or so, 400 pounds a tonne. It wasn't Mark.
No,
it was
it's
a local village.
Falkland, up near Shepton Mallet.
Oh, yes, I know.
But it wasn't a proposal. It was look at what we're doing,
Yes.
and I think
And the sales
it needs,
leader.
I think it needs to be looked at.
Well, let's listen to Richard.
Okay, so I talked to this guy named Mac Holmes. They seem a little hick, dare I say, but I thought that suits us. They're very one-to-one, but they do seem to supply a lot of very large companies, and they appear to be very good. So last Saturday, on my way down to Thruxton, I called in a village which I knew had one of their signs up. It's a village called Mere, which is a very nice, it's a town actually. I talked to the town council, the town clerk, and found the particular sign, and parked next to it. Actually, you can see my car on this, and looked at one of these signs, which is this device, which is not unlike what we've had before, except it's an aluminium faced sign. Very nicely made. I looked at it in some detail, but you'll see something on that sign that you might be a little bit surprised about. You see a few dents in it.
Mm.
Well, I thought that was somebody, some idiot, taking a ball peen hammer to it. But talking to the town clerk on the, well, I think I sent you the email. She emailed me back to say no, somebody had been taking shots at it. They've been shooting at it. And the great part of it was, SID signs were quite willing to replace the face, but they said, we're not bothering because it's still working 100%. And while I was there, I saw the thing working and it was very effective. And I would certainly say that the plastic faced ones wouldn't have stood up to that sort of abuse. So the fact it's got shot at would probably mean that we could even get it clouted by one of our farm implements that we know about, and it would still survive. So I was quite impressed that it was a good unit. I've just outlined very briefly the 3 units that they make. There's more than 3, but I'm just going to distill them down to 3 basic ones. And the prices, which are attractive. You can have a straight slow down sign that does nothing more than you set the speed at whatever you choose, 31 miles an hour, whatever, and it flashes slow down. It does no more than that. And that is, I'll show a little picture of it. It's on a tripod here, but it's this sign here, and all it says is slow down. The interesting part of that sign is it costs £585 plus VAT, which I understand Owen we can reclaim anyway. So it's a very cheap way of getting some sort of traffic calming device, but it does no more than simply tells people to slow down. And there's a few of these around, even going up the A38. This morning I noticed the one just over the hill, over the windows there. It's no more than a slow down sign. So at £585 you could probably buy more than one, but we'd still need to move them around, possibly. If Bob didn't notice that I didn't tell Somerset County Council about it.
How are they powered? Well, that's
It's 585.
no, powered. How are they powered? Energy.
Sorry,
How are they powered by energy?
I'm going to come to that.
Okay.
Because you can do the powering in 2 ways, dependent upon the unit itself. So just talk about that unit is 585. The next unit is a slow down sign, which is not unlike what we've had before, except it doesn't measure and tabulate every car that passes. So it shows the speed you want them to drive at. It doesn't show the speed that they are making, and that costs, compared to our previous one, quite a reasonable price, £1,260. So that's not unlike the signs that we've had in the past. It's just a slow down sign and a speed. We put say 30 miles an hour in that box, and it tells to slow down. And then there's the top level one.
Richard, could I just ask, on the ones you're saying at the moment, do they store data as well as just the flashing, or do they just...
They do store it. Their slow down sign doesn't.
Right.
This one stores data, and it tells you some speed, but it doesn't indicate to the driver the speed that they're driving at. Okay? And then you've got what they call the your speed sign, which is effectively the equivalent of what we've had in the past few years, which is a very similar, and it's like the one at near that I've just been photographing. And it shows the speed of the vehicle, and you set a limit, so you can say it goes red at 31 miles an hour, and then you put a top limit on it to make sure that people don't try and beat the machine. That has full data facilities, and that you can comes with the software, bracketry and everything else, and that comes out at £1,700, complete with a solar powered attachment. So as the chap said to me on it today, if you put that up now, you wouldn't need to change the battery all summer, which is quite a big advantage. And he said it is because my question was how easy it would be then, because we're going to move the thing. With the solar attachment, does it become difficult? He said, no, we've made a new instant bracket, very light, and it just, the whole thing goes from pole to pole with the solar attachment on it. So those are the three options. So it's up to you how you want to play this. I'm going to leave it, obviously, I'll send this information around with the letter from them that shows all this information. There's 4 attachments, including a sales form, giving prices. It's not the crispy, shall I say, website, all singing and dancing, but the information is there. So you need to look through both the website, which I'll put a link, I'll send it to Owen, I'll link to the website, the letter that I got from them, and the 4 data sheets that are there. The only comment I'd make about which one you could choose here is simply on how much do we want, how much do you want to spend, and how much value is there in getting a high spec unit. The more I've thought about it, the more I've thought possibly there isn't that much value in getting a high spec unit, except in this case they're relatively cheap, half the price of the radar box one. Because you can then download the data, you can graph the data, and you can look at the data. The big question you've got to ask yourself is, what do you do with it? And the world is full of data collection today, but not a lot is done with it. And I think we can have a danger of buying a lot of data, sitting around talking about it, and doing nothing with it.
Quick question, spare batteries, how much are those? Because we've got spare batteries for our...
It comes with, well, interestingly, it comes with 2 lithium batteries, which are much better than the things we've been using gel batteries in the past, but they've been relatively low amp hour. These are 20 amp hour. He thinks that it certainly should last. The way we set the unit is key to how long the battery will last. For instance, some of their units allow you to say thank you very much and give a little green thank you. Personally, I wouldn't bother with that because that just runs the battery down, and thanking people may be very nice, but it doesn't actually reduce speed. The only purpose of having a device is to slow cars down. That's the only purpose, isn't it? And in my opinion, data collection is very secondary. But you might feel that the larger unit with the flashing sign, the middle one, in other words, that doesn't collect the data so much, but gives a very visual sign that a car is travelling too quickly for the conditions, is probably quite a good optimal place. I mean, have this, and the solar unit works on it as well. Okay. So I'll forward that to Owen, and then perhaps you can, Owen, circulate it to everybody else.
We can add it to the agenda for July.
Thank you, Richard.
So you see that's what the unit looks like from the side. That's the actually working. Actually, sort of took some photographs while it was actually being used. It's quite bright, and from the back it's a fairly straightforward unit, but it's just a very simple Single case, not the battery box type of one.
So it comes with 2 batteries and one of them
Two
spare.
batteries, 2 batteries and a trickle charger. So if you've got the solar powered, hopefully you can charge.
Yes, could I just also ask Richard, in terms of size, is it similar to the size that we've got?
It's about the same size. It's 600 by 400, I think it is. Which is, yeah, I think that's quite a reasonable.
Richard, are they supplied with a bracket?
I think we need to buy additional brackets. We don't need to buy the brackets. It's 635 by 410, which is just about the same size as the large units we've had before. And it comes with a bracket that runs anything from 20 to 200 millimetres, I reckon. The average post is about 75 millimetres. But we need to buy some more brackets. I don't think we could use the ones we have now, which are similar posts, of course. But I'm pretty sure we couldn't use those. But might we use some elements of them? I don't know.
What's the warranty on them?
2 years.
Thank you.
Who in the past has installed these? Is it amongst ourselves?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, Richard has been
And
trying.
we set these up?
Sorry?
We have the competency to set these up. You would set it up, would you?
Sorry.
So okay, so we install it, but who has the know-how how to set this up?
Richard.
But I would welcome somebody else to join the clan.
Well,
As I said in the past.
I helped Richard when he was on holiday, so I'm happy to help him.
It's good if you've got somebody physically. They can occasionally do it, but it's not been a problem. Actually, quite honestly, moving it around is easy. The data collection is another issue, though. And I had a contentious issue really when I raised the point of if we wanted to download the RAID, because there was a question asked by the council, can we have the data? I said, certainly you can, but it's going to be raw data, and it was Bluetooth connected, which was relatively easy to do, but it didn't mean anything, because all it did was it gave you a list of cars and speeds and times. You've got to interpret that into something which is meaningful, so you can draw some graphs and get something out of it. But I'm questioning myself on that basis. I'm thinking, even if you have that software, and this kit comes with the software, the RAID will ask you £55 for it, wasn't it? But at least this comes with the software, so you can have it. What you do with it, I would question.
Do we have funds set aside, allocated, ring-fenced for this sort of...
Yeah, we did. When we set the precept for this year, we had a budget meeting in December, and I think we set aside an amount of money, a couple of £1,000, I think, set aside for the replacement of the SID. So, because we were aware of the fact that it was...
So there is a pot of money and it's about 2,000?
Yeah, and that's been part of the budget that we've set. So yeah, the money is there. At least up to that level.
Any other questions for Richard? Bob?
Not a question for Richard, but a comment more than anything, was in terms of the who does it, which Nigel was asking about. When Parish got involved with it, and it was also the emergency planning group, there was chapter 28 training,
Yeah.
because highways basically said anyone who's putting stuff up on highway signs, they need to have the chapter 28 training. So a number of the parish councillors got chapter 28.
We all went to
chapter 8. So that was so a number of the councillors had that done, so they've got that certification. And in terms of the data, the only thing that it may be useful for is certainly the police have said in other parishes that have got them, where data is collected and you can show that there is a particular problem in a particular place, then they will come out and do their speed checks, which obviously they can issue tickets, whereas these things don't. So they will use information that's sent around from the SIDS to target where they want to send their speed bikes and the cameras.
Okay.
Is that all right, Nigel?
Yeah, that's good. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Richard. Thank you. Okay, let's reopen our meeting. Is there any more on or clerk's matters?
On the crime, you had the crime report, and I think I laid David's fears that we hadn't suddenly degenerated into a crime village.
It could have been read that way.
It could have been read that way. But yes, I mean, those are reports we've only just started having. So obviously I will send those out as we get them. As I say, because they're not specific to Brent Knoll, there's not a huge amount of meaning to them because they're covering a bigger area, but you can see what's going on in the area as a whole. Whether we can get better data from the police, I don't know. I somehow doubt it. But it's probably better to have it than not have it, I guess. But apart from that,
Yes.
I think one thing that was disappointing on this one was often under the details column, they do put a little bit of a write-up of what it is, and that sometimes gives you a bit more identification as to where the issues were, but
yeah,
I don't know why they didn't put it on this
no,
one.
no.
And I think it was David raised in his email about the priorities. The policing priorities came from the cluster group, because the cluster, which is basically a group of parish councils and town councils in this area, who meet quarterly, I think. And the police come along to that as a police and pact meeting, can't remember.
Police
Communities together.
community.
And it was from that meeting that these were the priorities that came out as to the ones that wanted to be targeted in the area.
Some councils are lucky enough to get a police presence at their council meetings. St Piers gets all of our information, so she knows when we have parish council, but of course they tend to prioritise. They go to places where the issues are greater, so we're not a high priority as far as they're concerned.
So we need more crime in order to be on the
Absolutely.
agenda.
Fights.
They'll be at the fate of it. I think they're expecting trouble.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, Clerk's Matters.
The only thing I just wanted to say was on really communication, trying to improve the information that you get from me. Just thinking, it's fairly patchy sometimes. I'm not quite sure sometimes who's actually received what, and I just wonder whether it might be easier in the future if we have, say, 2 mailings a week perhaps, and put everything into one mailing, so that you know that on a Tuesday or Monday you're going to get all the emails I've had through the weekend and perhaps the back end of the week, we're marked as either requiring response or not, as the case may be, and perhaps on Thursday. So at the moment, what I tend to do is if I get an email which I think is of interest to you, then I just mail it straight away. As soon as I get it, I just wing it out to the parish council. And maybe from your point of view, you're looking at emails on a very spasmodic sort of basis.
Could you, when you email them, if you email it with a read request, that means that when anyone opens or reads that mail, their mail server responds back to you to say that that person or recipient is opened and read that email.
But you can turn it off.
As an automatic response.
Yeah.
But it's a way of either creating something that when people do open them, you get some feedback to say that people have. Because, I mean, Nigel is probably in the same boat as I am. It's the amount of emails I receive on a daily basis as a managing director of a company, and I've now got automatic selection on my computer where anything from anyone to do with parish council matters automatically goes into a parish council spam box, so that they're all there, they're not read, but then I can read them, and it's a way of filtering the emails that are coming in. And Nigel probably has similar issues as well.
Yeah, my issues are the emails that come from you, I mean, seem to split between my junk box, my other box and my inbox.
I'm undecided.
It's probably a housekeeping issue with my email.
Well,
to sort out.
It could be all sorts of things, couldn't it, really? I mean, the thing is, one of the things is very difficult sometimes, because some things really do need a physical response, and one of the things for that is an agenda. An agenda actually is required, because obviously when we went away from mailing agendas and minutes, which is what we used to do, we went to electronic email, and one of the controls that you have to put on that is the fact that you've received it, and not just a receipt on the email itself, but you've actually received it and read it. And so all I'm trying to do is try and make life easier for you, because you get stuff from all different quarters, and obviously the easier I can make it, the better it is. But I think John and I talked about it about a year ago, and what we decided perhaps was the best thing to do was to put information required on top of the email, so response required or for information only. And I think that's probably the easiest way to identify an email. If it's only information, then that's all it is. You don't need really to respond to it. But if it's information required,